Hey, what's up guys? It's your boy Ghouls here. I'm going to show you guys a little tip on sidechaining using an oscilloscope to help make your drums hit harder. Now, I'm going to play this track. It's loud, so be warned. I'm going to play it from the build, and then when the drums kick in, we'll take a look at the oscilloscope and I'll show you the right way to set up the sidechaining and the wrong way. And it's not necessarily right or wrong, maybe I shouldn't say that, but it will help to make it a little bit more clear what's happening and what can go wrong. So I'm going to be playing in, hold on, let me just turn one thing off here. Okay, I'm going to be playing in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so that's the drop that I'm going to use as an example, and the main thing I'm looking at here on this oscilloscope is this area right before this snare. You can see this is the snare, here's the transient, here's the body, and then the tail, and then right here you can see the side chaining on the sub, cuts off and then it resumes. And the main problem that I'm finding, I'm using a plugin called Duck. I think it's by Devious Machines. Let me pull up one of these. Okay, so here's the plugin, here's the envelope I have set up. And in theory, because it's being triggered by MIDI, it should be perfect and it should kick in right when I expect it to. But it's not. If I looked at the scope without doing what I'm about to recommend, I was finding that it was screwing up they were overlapping, so it was screwing up my snare waveform and my kick. And the goal to me when making a track like this is to have the kick and the snare be the loudest thing in the mix and be as loud as they can without destroying the waveform. So you can see right here, there's just a tiny little bit of clipping going on, but in general, the overall body of the drum is not being affected. And you get these awesome samples and they sound good, and you want to keep them sounding good and make them sound better and louder and fuller without going over this 0 decibel line. So there's a couple tricks you can do, and I'll make another video that goes into how to do that to make the drums sound fuller. But for now, I just want to talk about making them as separate from the rest of the mix down as possible so they stand out and they really pop. Now, what I'm finding about this overlapping problem is that if I just if I go over to my triggers for the sidechain, the volume automation, which are these four. I have one for my mid-range basses, I have one for my ambient synth sounds, and then I have one for my FX. Then I have a separate sub that I use for a certain section because there's just so much going on that to make all those different subs that are actually in the samples work, it's a mess to keep the level consistent. So I cut out all those lows, and then I have a separate sub. So anyways, I have these different tracks that are sending MIDI data out to trigger that duck plugin. And here are, let me color those real quick. Here they are. They're all, duplicates for the most part. I'm not really, I might even have to go back and take a look at some of this other stuff going on here because I think they're supposed to be duplicates, but that's not important right now. In general, I'm just going to look at one of them. I'll take a look at this one right here. So when one of these MIDI, when the playhead crosses over one of these MIDI notes, it's supposed to trigger the plugin to pull the volume down, but it's not happening exactly when it's supposed to. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the oscilloscope and playing it and watching the waveform, and then I'm changing this track delay by a certain amount until it's out of the way of the drum hit. So what I'll do is I'll pull up the oscilloscope and I'll go to a section like right here, and I'm going to play it, and I'm going to show you what happens to the waveform as I change that time constraint. Let me set up a loop so that way I can keep going. All right, I'm going to be playing in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you can see clearly what's happening, especially on that more riddim-y part. I'm not really sure what's causing it, if it's the VSTs I have on some of those tracks or on the bus, the group channel, but regardless, I know that it's happening, and it's really screwing up the transient and then the body and the phase relationships of the snare hit. So that's not going to really work. And there's in the software, in the sidechaining software in Duck, there's this feature. I don't know how long ago they implemented it, but it's a look ahead feature. It's in here, and I've tried it all the way up to the 15 milliseconds look ahead, and I don't really see much of a difference in the waveform. So maybe if that went up further, I don't know, maybe it would work. But I struggled for a little while trying to figure out any other way to do this, and what I settled on was this track delay. Now you could probably just move the notes on the timeline in the arrangement view physically, just slide them over, but that doesn't make any sense, and it's not really conducive to testing. So like I said, what I'm doing right now is I'm playing the track, looking at the oscilloscope, and you can even I could just solo the drums, and then the track in question, I could just solo those, and then play it back with everything else out of the way, and just watch what happens when I move this number like I was showing you before. And I'll just do it one more time just for the heck of it. So negative 50 seems to be the sweet spot, somewhere between negative 40 and negative 50 milliseconds. And what I'm looking for is I want the bass, the sub bass in that group of sounds in that mid-range bus. I want the sub bass to be at the zero crossing before the transient of the drum hit. Because if I don't set this delay, it's way up here or way down there, and none of this stuff looks right. It doesn't look like the sample, the original sample at all. And something really weird with the phase happens during the one part where the sub bass is like up in here, and it pulls all of this information up into the positive or the negative. But really, I want it at the zero crossing before the drum hits. So like I said, what you could do is you could go through each one of your tracks that has sidechaining on it and isolate the drums and each one of those tracks, and then play with the delay, the track delay of each one of those trigger tracks. And for instance, like this one right here is my mid-range that has the sub bass built in. That one needs negative 50, and there's a lot of tracks in here, so maybe that's why it's like that. But then these two, I found they don't really need much. These are just my synth and ambient sounds and my effects, like the risers and sweeps and impacts and all that, white noise and everything else. And then here, this is the sub track, the separate sub, which is really simple as well, but for some reason that one also seems to want about negative 30. Any more than that, and it doesn't line up. It's actually goes too far before the drum hit, and I don't want that either. So yeah, I hope this helps some of you guys out. It'll definitely make your drums hit harder if you think about what's actually happening with a speaker. You want the speaker to be, the speaker cone to kind of reset and be like at the point where it's not moving anymore right before that drum hits, because if contrast is what's going to make it hit hard, well then, right here's the first principles, observation that I'm making that can prove that speaker cone has stopped just before the next drum hit to really maximize the impact. But yeah, I hope that helped you guys out, and yeah, go make those drums hit hard. Take it easy.